Welcome to Beyond the Backlog, where we look at thrilling tales of gaming triumphs, both past and present, exploring the strategies, challenges, and unforgettable moments that shape the ever-evolving landscape of our digital adventures. I'm Nick.
And I'm Zack.
And today, let's talk about the different types of hard games.
Yeah, so what are we defining as a hard game here?
Well, we think we got a couple different ways to do it. First one is just kind of obvious. They're just, we suck at them.
So, yes, to make the distinction clear, these are not necessarily going to be games that everyone will find hard, but the first category here, yes, is ones that we personally just can't get a handle on, so we think are hard.
And it's really not as much games as it is genre.
Yeah, fair enough.
Style, and that, shockingly, it's the same for both of us, is the 2D fighting games. Right, so your Mortal Kombats, your Street Fighters, your Soul Caliburs.
Yeah, like, I have played Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter on Super Nintendo, and I cannot beat a single opponent on the easiest difficulty, even after trying to, spend a good hour learning a few moves and combos. It just does not click with me, especially on a D-pad.
Yeah.
It's like 2D fighters with D-pads. But even moving on to, Soul Calibur on, GameCube. And I loved playing as Link in Soul Calibur on GameCube, but to say that I know any of the particular combos or how to chain together a grab with anything else, no, I don't have that knowledge. I don't have that ability.
Yeah, I am the gamer of the family. Most of my family plays video games, so that's kind of my thing. I am just the worst at them. And Soul Calibur 2 especially is the big example where take something like Smash Bros. I am pretty good at it, relatively speaking. Soul Calibur, I get smacked by everyone.
And to make yet another distinction here, we're not talking about games that are poorly made.
No, they're great.
I was going to say, we're talking about games where we want to enjoy them. We know there's great mechanics in there. We just can't do it because something that's just hard because it's difficult to understand what you're supposed to do is maybe another topic for another time.
Yeah, it's not hard. We're just stupid is kind of the way for it.
But another example of a game that I just could not play, it was just too difficult to understand for me personally, was Polybridge. And I love physics and something World of Goo, that's a fun little, connect dots to keep something from falling over. But in Polybridge, trying to make a bridge and the constraints of this much money being spent, and the longer you make beams and the more beams you add to your bridge, the more expensive it gets. I made it 10 levels in thinking wow, I'm really starting to get the hang of this, eh? And then I found out just how much more game there was. I'm God, no, I've already, I can barely succeed in these ones.
Yeah.
That was an example of a game where I legitimately just gave up because it was too hard.
Yeah, I get that. The only one that I could maybe add on to it is the genre is not coming to me at this point, but your Europa Universalis 4, your Heart of Iron, the big epic strategy games.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy them. I play them with a couple friends every so often, maybe once or twice a year now at this point. They're really fun. I go on a team with them and they carry me because I don't understand all of the intricate mechanics of them.
Yeah, same with, again, we're not talking about playing Civilization on the hardest difficulty, but there's so many different things going on in a game like Civilization that it's hard to wrap your head around all of it at once. But on top of that, what if you do get really good at the game? The problem is there's always going to be somebody better than you.
Yeah.
So that brings us to our second type of hard. Competitive games. So,
which is the 2D fighting games, just we're so bad we don't even consider ourselves competitive.
I was going to say that brings up the 2D fighting. Yes, exactly to your point is if I was to try and go online and play against other people in any 2D fighting game, I think the only one I did was Pokken Tournament when it came out on Wii U. And I was hell yeah, not even 2D per se, but just like a one-on-one fighter with Pokemon. And I learned how to grapple, and I learned a few moves. Chandelure was my boy. I never won a single online match, and I played like 30. But you had a few examples yourself?
Yeah, my saving grace with fighting games is Smash Bros. And I did go online and play Ultimate. I did okay. I won some, I lost some. It's the internet connection that always had issues. The two main ones that kind of get into your competitive kind of games. One is one that I am actively bad at, which is CSGO or CS2 now that's come out. And that's just, I'm not a shooter guy, especially not a PC shooter.
Oh yeah, and I put under mine like CSGO, and then just, for example, like any of the Call of Duties.
Yeah.
Where it boils down to learning how opponents are going to be maneuvering on a map, learning choke points, specific spots you could stand to snipe other people. And if you are coming in as a fresh baby face trying to learn this, you're just going to get headshotted from... and you won't have any idea where it's coming from. And it's so frustrating.
And then it happens again and again. Yeah. And then the big one for me, because I still play it to this day, have some friends that play it, League of Legends. At this point, I entirely just do like with friends, but there is such a skill gap with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that makes competitive games hard is that there's always someone better, right? So it's like you feel like you're constantly struggling to go up the same hill. And then you just either reach a point where you either want to keep climbing, or you just go, you know what, this is just kind of fine. I'm happy with this level. Because you're always going to go where like your level is.
And I think the only game I really got into that was competitive like that was Rocket League. And some people might even say that Rocket League just on its own is hard enough to get into, to understand and control. But no matter what you do and how much effort you put in, like I spent hours in the practice mode learning how to take the ball off the wall and control it in the air. But when I'm playing competitively against other people of my same rank, I'm just getting wrecked.
Yeah.
It's like you almost sometimes need somebody to carry the team, or just like pop off and have a really good game or a really lucky save to even have a chance. But the thing about all of these types of games is the skill ceiling is constantly increasing.
Yes.
So even if it came out at like 10, 12 years ago, like League, the best players are constantly learning new strategies, exploits, techniques.
As an example, there's one move called the Insec, named after the competitive player who first did it. Whereas Lee Sin, you jump in and you like kick someone back towards the team, I think is what the Insec is. I don't know. I'm not good at Lee Sin. But the Insec is something that's known. By now, anyone that's in like your base level can do maneuvers like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So something that like the best player in the world did, and everyone collectively lost their minds. 10 years later, 12 years later is like, everyone can do that. It's such a constant grind.
Yeah, same thing with like Rocket League is I remember watching some of the RLCSs, like the top, like playing for prize money, determining who the best Rocket League players are. And the number of times they would do something that was just like, this is the first time you've seen it in an actual competitive setting like this. And then flash forward 5 years and every single person on the field can do that. They can drive on the ceiling, get underneath a ball, pop it off in any direction. So it's like suddenly like teams are learning how to like counter more because there's more options you can do at any given time, and just the level of control that people have with their characters and things in these like top end competitive games. It's ridiculous. And it almost requires like a full-time job level of commitment
100%
to stay at the top, especially like if you do have like sponsorships. Like in Rocket League, I am almost was on the cusp of champion level,
mm-hmm.
which is like less than like 1% of people at one point were in that rank. So I would have been in the top 1%. I don't know how it is nowadays, but I would have been absolutely blasted by anyone in champion or above. And some of these top end people, like, I don't even understand what they're doing.
Yeah, no, it's wild. That's like their most skill intensive hard. The next one you kind of get into is like part pattern recognition, part Twitch reaction. Any of the like, the FromSoft games, your hard platformers.
Mm-hmm. So when I think of the poster children for this sort of category, I am thinking Dark Souls.
Yep.
That's when everyone says like it's the Dark Souls of blah, blah, blah. They mean like you have to focus, learn, and like react and understand like hitboxes and invincibility frames and parry timing and stuff.
And really looking at the enemy to figure out, okay, this arm motion is going to be this type of attack. Well, that arm motion is that type of attack. It's memorization, but not in a way of like, oh, I messed up. Now, next time I need to remember at this exact spot, I got to do this exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a lot more fluid with something like that. Now, the ones that don't do that are going to be a little bit different because they're not as quick or they're not as long, right?
Yeah, and these are games that are designed to be hard, but even if you want to try and go for like 100% completion in a FromSoft game, like especially like Sekiro for me was the one where I was like, I loved that game, but I hated it in so many different times. I'm like, that was so frustrating. It was so hard. I was never going to go back and 100% complete that.
No.
And that's the thing with a lot of these in this category is something like Super Meat Boy, I think is my next poster child for just Twitch reaction platforming. And Super Meat Boy which is done by Edmund McMillan. And he's known for making brutally hard games. But to try and 100% that, like, if you went for a platinum, I would legitimately call you sadistic. Like, there is no need to go for 100% completion. It's hard enough to just beat the game as is. But then he went and did it again. He made The End Is Nigh, which is pretty much like an indirect follow-up to it. And just, I really like that game more because it's not as asinine to try and 100% complete. They understood that nobody wants to play the hardest series of levels 20 in a row without failing or like a single time in order to get an achievement.
Yeah. And with Meat Boy especially is where I get to that point of quick deaths, right? So the Meat Boy games, especially at the beginning points, they're like 8-second levels, 10-second levels. Even if you're getting up to like the 30-40 second range on a level, that's not too bad if you're constantly dying. The concern is if you got into like longer levels, right? Or like it happens with the more old games, right? Something like a Ninja Gaiden can kind of be annoying because the levels just feel a little bit longer. And when you die, it feels longer to get back to it. And
yeah, and in order to keep somebody playing, you can't punish them too hard.
Exactly.
That's where something like I think of like Trackmania or like Trials Rising, both where it's about how you maneuver a vehicle over crazy obstacles. And there is like rewards for memorizing the track, but just trying to make it through is one thing. But you and both of them have a button to just reset your position to something.
Yeah.
So you can give that obstacle a try again without losing time and momentum there. And then I think my last poster child for hard kind of like Twitch reaction games would be Run and Gun. Like Contra comes up a lot, as well as Mega Man.
Yeah, and then for a more new perspective, something like your Cuphead.
Yeah, so Cuphead definitely takes that style of you don't know what enemy is coming off the screen at you, but over time you kind of learn, like, you're not going to have a long, clear area ahead of you to just walk. You kind of need to learn something could come at you from in front, from behind, from below, from above at any time. And you need to learn when to, like, how to use your different abilities. Like, say in Cuphead, you can pick different kinds of guns. In Mega Man, you have all the different
boss powers
you get, and learning when to pull them out when you get too overwhelmed. versus like just what's effective versus certain enemy types. Like it's rewarding, but especially if you're just beginning and you don't have all these upgrades, it can be really difficult to even make it through the first level. Like I can't even beat the first level of Contra.
Yeah, no, it's something where it's like, I could beat the first one and the second one, now it kills me.
The same with like Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah, that was the other one I was thinking of. There was one magical day where a cousin of mine and I played it for like 10 hours straight, and we still didn't even beat the game. And this is pre-Switch era, right? Pre-Rewind. But the last one I've got for like a Twitch reaction pattern recognition is Celeste. And the thing with Celeste is it's a hard platformer where you can climb up walls and move, and you get one dash. And to replenish that dash, you have to land on solid ground. Mm-hmm. And then it replenishes it, and then you're good to go. Later on in the game, you get a second dash. It's all something else. But something like that is difficult in almost like the pattern recognition of like it's as a puzzler. Because each screen, if you die, you just go back to the beginning of that screen. So it's, instead, if you frame it like a constant stream of puzzles, it winds up being a lot easier to work through. It's still a very hard game, but it's not unforgiving in some of the sense of some of the other ones.
Now, games where it is just puzzles that are really hard is another totally different category, maybe another topic for another video. But yes, I don't know what I was going to say. So we're going to cut this little bit out. But when you're playing through Celeste, like that is a game where obviously it's difficult to go for like 100% completion, but there is an end to the story.
Yep.
Something like Cuphead, like there is an end to that story. Contra, you can finish the game. Even Ghosts and Goblins, I don't know why you would, but you could finish that game.
And then beat it again to get the true ending.
So what about games that don't have a way to beat them?
Yeah, this is kind of like they're hard. They're quote unquote hard and also difficult ones. But some of them, for one reason or another, they want you to keep playing. Something like a high score game, right? You look at ones that I do truly enjoy, right? Your Galagas, your Centipedes. They're just fun, but they're hard. Make no two bones about it.
Mm-hmm. And I think even a game that technically has a final level, but it's just designed in a way where you're not supposed to get to the final level per se. Something like Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about that one ad nauseum in our Super Nintendo list. But that is not a game where the goal is to turn it on, play through all 50 levels in the bonus boss at the end in one sitting. I don't think it's possible without memorizing it to do so. And that comes, it's like almost like a speedrunner or like top end, like arcade competitive level of knowledge that you require. Or another one that comes to mind for me is like Rare's RC Pro-Am, where quite literally they didn't expect anyone to beat it. So like the 24th and final race is impossible if you don't save every single like missile pickup until that final race. Like it is not meant to be beaten. And I think it's kind of frustrating to get to that point in a game, but when you frame them as like arcade style games like Tetris.
Yeah, because Tetris, it has kill screens, right? So when you reach a certain point, you could do a Tetris, and if you do a Tetris in such a certain way, in such a certain area, you kill the game, right? The game doesn't know what to do. It kind of breaks the memory, and then that's it. And now people have gotten so good at Tetris from a competitive standpoint that you're seeing later and later kill screens now, and like later and later points. It's really interesting to take a look at. But anything that deals with arcades, we're always going to try to find some way to like quote unquote beat the game, right? It's the whole Pac-Man, right? The first person to reach the final level in Pac-Man because they went through all the memory.
Yeah, but I was going to say that's a perfect example of how it's not meant to be beaten. It's not designed intrinsically to be beaten.
No, but we'll try to find it.
And yeah, we're just getting so good at them, not us per se, but people are getting so good at them.
Not us.
That they're just reaching a point that the game can't give you more content.
Yeah.
But there is one other kind of game that we wanted to talk about that can't necessarily be beaten. And that is what you're labeling as Fadian games.
Yeah. So any game that kind of got inspired by the Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, anything like that. Those are kind of, they're beatable, right? You see speedruns where they beat them in like minute and a half, 2 minutes. But it is such a old school take on things like that, right? It's, you brought up the point of like sadist take on it, like a masochistic.
You have to be like a sadist to actually practice enough to get that good.
Yeah. And I have more of an issue with games like that. And I don't know if it's because it's a more modern game and I see it as more like a Twitch streaming rage bait angle.
Yeah. And that's where I don't think it's meant to be beaten. I think it's meant to be good for content.
Yeah.
And I think even going back further than that, so the one that I wanted to mention was the game I Am Bread.
Yep.
And if you are a fan of like 2012 to 2014 Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, PewDiePie, then you have undoubtedly heard of this game. And something that like the games that Bennett Foddy has put out in more recent years kind of echo that style of like, first and foremost, we want to make it difficult to control. And
Yep.
And in I Am Bread, it's like you use, because I'm playing on PlayStation, it's like you use L1, R1, L2, R2 as like the four corners of your piece of bread. And you're pretty much trying to flop yourself over and swing up to like climb walls. And your goal is to get into a toaster. But just trying to do that is so ridiculous. If you wanted to go for a perfect A+ ranking, then you literally just have to exploit something like spending time on the ground in any shape or form. You'll lose the quality of your bread, but you might literally have to swing yourself off of a cabinet and just pray that you land successfully on a platform somewhere else without falling on the ground. Like, it is not meant to be beaten and 100% completed, but for some reason they have the option there if you want to go for an A+ rank and everything. But I don't think anyone wants to.
I'll hit a little bit more OG than that. This is back in like early YouTube days, like 07, 08 was I Want to Be the Guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that old, like, you're taking the hard part of like NES platformers. It was a fan-made like freeware platformer that took a bunch of assets from old Nintendo games and Super Nintendo games and that. And it was just frustrating because there's no rhyme or reason to things, right? You'll walk on a space and then, that space just falls down into nothingness and you die. There's no way to know. That's just how it is. The one I will always remember playing was you're walking through like little apple trees and the apples fall down. And if they fall down, they kill you. And then you reach a point you can jump over them. Well, now the apples are falling upwards and they kill you. Right. So it's that kind of like, that's almost like the early days of things like that.
Like very reminiscent of like the old school ROM hacks, the Kaizo
Mario, or one of the videos that I still remember watching was like the Super Mario Frustration.
But at the same time, like, that does not mean something like Mario Maker, where people can make poorly designed and ridiculously stupidly precise platforming challenges. We're not classifying that as a game that can't be beat here.
No, it's content creation is kind of what it is. And I don't know if that really is a kind of hard. It is a kind of hard, but it's different than some of the early ones that we talked about.
Because obviously if there's any sort of way for people to make their own challenges, people are going to try and push the limits of what is doable in a game engine. But even in terms of Bennett Foddy himself, is that more recent one that I've seen popping up and I haven't watched yet. That's like the difficult game about climbing. Honestly, when I'm looking at the brief footage of it, makes me think exactly of I Am Bread. Like it's that same style of just stupid controls because it's supposed to look silly for somebody else watching.
And maybe it's going to be the future Dark Souls of. Right? It's like a Fadian version of this.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
But there you got it. You got a couple different types of hard games, quote unquote. And,
I mean, games we suck at and some other hard games.
Yeah, games that we don't understand how you're good at. But
yeah, if you're really, really good at any of these, let us know.
Or really, really bad at other ones, let us know. I might like to read those better.
Yeah, and if you're a speedrunner in a game, don't want to hear from you.
It's easy. Just do this.
Yeah, like, and that's another point before we go is like I did do speedruns of a Zelda game where I was making it harder on myself. That's also not what we're talking about because The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening on Switch is an easy game, but to perform frame perfect tricks to stay in the top end of like the competitive end, like that's what we're getting into with like the League of Legends and Rocket League kind of stuff is we're not interested in thousands of hours of practice here.
No. But that's it. That's all. We'll see.